Today I'm going to build a new all-purpose template in Logic Pro. I just upgraded to a new M1 Max Macbook Pro, so I thought for the new year it would be nice to have a fresh, clean template for my projects. I like to use one template as my starting point for all projects, whether I'm doing a big orchestral film score thing or something small and dark and synthy. It doesn't really matter. I just like one single all-purpose do everything I needed to template, and then for special circumstances, I'll adjust it from there. So I'm gonna open up a new project here, and we're gonna go with just one single software instrument to start, and we'll build it out from there. So the first thing I'm gonna do is build out my main sections, which will be woodwinds, brass, keys, synths, percussion, and strings. Before now, I used to only have my strings and piano samples loaded up in the template, ready to go when I started, because I didn't want to sit around and wait for my entire brass library to load if I wasn't going to actually use it. For this template, I think I'm going to go with the Cinematic Studio libraries just across the board. I like how they sound, and I especially like how easy they are to use. They're very playable, which is pretty important to me. So that's going to be kind of the main basis of the sound, and then if I need different things, I'll add them in at different times. So I'm going to start right at the top of the score with the piccolo. We'll add this in here. Now what I'm going to do for the MIDI out channel is set it to channel 1, and that will allow me to use just this one instance of contact with all the different woodwind instruments loaded into it together. So here, if we go to track, other, new with next MIDI channel, we'll get channel 2, we'll be able to make that flute 1, and I can keep doing that for all the rest of the woodwind instruments. So here, I'll fast forward a bit while I do it. All right, I've got all my instruments loaded. I've got all the tracks named with the appropriate MIDI channel going to the right track. The next thing I want to do is add the icons. It's not like an important thing. It obviously doesn't change what the music sounds like, but I think just aesthetically it makes the program a little more pleasing to use and just helps you visually also get your bearings and to see what you're working with at any time. So here, click the icon, go to the winds. I don't think there's a piccolo here, so I'm just going to grab this flute, and I'm going to do that for the whole woodwind section. Okay, now they're named, they have icons. The next thing I'm going to do is put these all in a track stack. I'm going to choose a summing stack, which means that all these winds are going to be organized together and I can mix them as a group. So I can adjust the reverb overall, or the balance in the mix, the send, anything I want to do with this summing stack. So instead of sum 1, we're going to call this woodwinds, give it an icon as well. Now the input for these woodwinds is bus 1, so I just want to make sure on the instrument that I'm also going out to bus 1. Now let's check that that worked. All right, woodwinds are done. Now I'm going to add the brass section. So I'm going to go to track, new software instrument, and we'll start with the French horns. So French horn 1, make sure that that MIDI out channel is 1. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the winds. I'm going to use the with next MIDI channel for the whole brass section. I'm going to add these instruments all in one instance of contact. So see you back here in a second. If you're wondering why I'm using 4 solo horn instruments instead of just using the 4 horns patch, it's because I usually like to do chords in the horns. And if I was doing a chord with 4 horns, even like a triad, I'd be ending up with 12 horns. And that isn't really what I'm intending to write for. You know, I'm sure that would be great sound in some places. So in order to keep it as 4 horns when I'm doing a chord, I actually want each note to be on a different instrument and played appropriately. So although it may be a little extra hassle to not be using that 4 horns patch, I'm going to get a better sound this way. All right, let's add our icons here. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the winds and put these all in a track stack. I'm going to use this summing stack. I'm going to call it brass. And for the brass, we actually have an icon that looks like an entire brass section, which is nice. And then the brass is bus 2. So I'm just going to make sure everybody here is coming out bus 2. Let's see if we got some sound. Pretty good. So in score order, the next thing to come after the brass is the percussion. And I actually include synths and keys and all those things in that category, even though synths may not technically be percussion. So the next thing I want to add is some placeholder tracks for synths. I don't want to actually put in the specific synthesizers or patches because those are going to change for every single track. But I like to have just kind of 10 ready to go that I can just instantly grab when I'm like, oh, I want to add this sort of pad or something. Just immediately there's a track already ready. I don't even have to think about adding a new one. So in this case, we're going to do new tracks, and I'm going to add 10 software instrument tracks that are empty channel strips. Let's see, audio output. We'll do no output again because I'm going to bust these together. That should be good. And I'm okay with these names that they're giving us, just these generic names, because I will name them whatever they need to be when the time comes up. These are going to be a track stack, summing, synths. All right, I'm going to go in the mixer so I can change the output of these all at once. But the output is going to be this synths. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually hide all but 2 of them so that I don't actually have to see stuff I'm not going to use. But if I need it, I can just hit H, which I want these 2. I can just hit H and grab it if I need it, but sometimes I might only need 2 synth patches there, so that's enough. So we're going to leave that exactly like that. We'll deal with sends and things in another step. So the next section I want to add is keys, and in keys I also include harps and all those kinds of things. So I'm going to use 2 different piano instruments and a harp, and those I just grab all the time. So they're really useful in my template to just be ready. I can just sit down and start. Usually I just start with that piano, so it's good to have it ready to go. So we're going to go with new tracks, and I'll use contact on all of them, and I'm going to create 3. Let's leave it no output for now, and we'll think about how we want to send those out after. So on instrument 13, I'm going to use the Cinematic Studio piano, which is made to blend with all the other Cinematic Studio libraries. That's going to be CS piano. Another piano that I really like is the emotional piano from Tonehammer. So I'm going to load that one up too. I like to be able to just grab it. And let's see. I'm going to actually change this to piano CS instead of CS piano. Piano CS, piano emotional. Last one's going to be the harp. And I'm going to add the icons to all of these guys as well. I actually really like the Contact harp that just comes in the Contact Factory library. I've always thought it was a pretty nice sound. There are other good harps out there, but for my purposes, which is like not using harp all that much, the Contact harp is fine. It works for what I need. All right, so let's see. Is there a harp here? Yes. Grab this piano. I'm going to stack all these together in a keys section. Perfect, ready to go. Next, I'm going to load up percussion, and although I think in the future I might decide to add some more orchestral percussion, what I usually use on more of a day-to-day basis is some cymbal rolls and the drummer with the Logic drummer. So I think I'm only going to load those. I'm not going to deal with snare drums and bass drums and those other things for now. We're just going to use the daily stuff. So how many do I want? We're going to do 1 track for the cymbals, and I'm going to actually use 3 different MIDI channels. So I'm going to use the Rise and Hits soft cymbal rolls. I really like those. We're going to have 3 instances of Rise and Hit. So what I'm loading up right now are these soft cymbal rolls, which I use all the time. And I like to alternate around between them, so I'm not just using the same cymbal roll over and over and over, or you can kind of hear it at that point. So this is going to be Sim Roll 1. And then I also want to add this drummer track in. I'm just going to leave just the default kit ready to go. I don't want to actually have a beat always in my template. That would be annoying, but we're going to call it drummer. And we're going to group all these guys together once again in a percussion stack. All right, next we need strings. I'm going to use 5 different instances of contact for this, just for my different sections of the strings. The reason is with woodwinds and brass, I'm usually pretty happy with the ensemble sound, and I've never really needed to fine tweak as much as I do with the strings. Sometimes with the strings, it's just the violin 2 part needs to come out more, and I really prefer to be able to just grab the whole instrument and bring it up, or change the reverb on the strings more specifically than I ever do with the wind sections. So we're gonna have 5 of these guys with contact, no output to start with. And let's name all these guys and add our instruments in, and I'll see you back in a second. Add a track stack for the strings, summing stack as always. All right, so that's the main sections set up, ready to go. I'm gonna try something a little different with this template than I've done before. I've been noticing I need to mix my voiceover or dialogue against the music in times where now the mastering is getting applied to the dialogue and it's just becoming kind of a mess. So I was thinking if all of my music went to its own bus first, and then the dialogue was just dry out to the main send. It might make it a little easier to mix that way. So I'm gonna send all of these main sections to a new music bus, which I'm making up right now. So instead of the stereo out, we're gonna go to bus 8, and bus 8 will be called what? What are we gonna call bus 8? Not aux 8, we'll call it music. And I'm going to add it down here. So to be able to see this music bus in my track here, I'm gonna go to reassign tracks, mixer, aux, music. Now I can see it down here as a track that I can access through here. And what I can do here then is apply any of my mastering effects and kind of main volume and all that stuff for music right here. Let's choose a nice icon for it. And then separately then I'm gonna wanna have my main out. So you have two choices. I only have two outputs, not sending things different places. So for my purposes, essentially output stereo and master are kind of doing the same thing. So I'm gonna go with output stereo. Basic setup's in pretty good place. Now I wanna think about my sends and effects. And there's generally only two effects that I'm gonna use on a daily basis, which are reverb and delay. I'm not really using like a flanger on strings in most of my projects or anything like that, but I do want to set up those basic ones. And the long reverbs are going to be for bigger orchestral spaces and we're in a big hall, and a shorter reverb might be more appropriate for like a small room, maybe like an acoustic guitar or something. Now I know there are lots of fantastic reverbs out there. I'm not a huge gear production nerd. I like stuff that sounds good and in a lot of ways good enough. So I actually have been pretty happy with the Chromaverb built in with Logic. I don't know, I don't have the ears for super production. Like I said, I don't really care that much. So I think it sounds pretty good, and that's kind of good enough for me, and clients have never rejected a track because of the reverb. So I think we're in pretty good place. On this one, I have one set up here, template. No, let's go to long actually. Let's go to template long first, template long. And then on number 9, we have our short. And what I'm gonna add for bus 11 is a mono delay, just an echo would be one way to put it. And then on bus 12, I'm gonna have a stereo delay. The stereo delay is kind of like a ping pong sound where you get it delaying at different rates in your left ear or your right ear. So here, I'll show you an example on just this piano. It's kind of bouncing all back and forth, which is a really nice way to add some life and interest to a lot of different instruments. You could use it for accompaniment parts, ostinatos. You could use it to add some interest to a vocal line or to a synth lead or something like that. So I'm gonna leave it at the default settings right now because the specifics will change on the track, but it is sometimes something I'll use, just add a little interest to a sound, is bump up that delay right there. So reverbs and delays are all I really need sends for on a regular basis. So that's all I'm gonna set up. One thing I am gonna do is change the names of those though. All right, so I'm gonna go here in mix and IO labels and change the names of some of these things here. So instead of bus 9, this is gonna be, the long name for this is going to be reverb long. The short name will be reverb long. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the other reverb here. All right, again, just one of those aesthetic things that even though after regular usage, I know this top one is always my reverb, and with some experimentation, you could figure out the bottom one is your stereo delay. It's still more pleasant to be able to just see what you need right there. So those kind of things we take care of now while we set up our template and not while we're in the middle of writing and we're like, I'm gonna do that later, which we never do later. So that's why we're doing it now. All right, so the next thing I wanna do is set up my screen sets. So for my main workstation, I'm using an ultra wide monitor, which is awesome. I highly recommend if anybody wants to get one of those. So I'm gonna set up 3 scenarios that I usually find myself in. One is to just use the whole big arrange window, and that's gonna be locked as my main setting on number 1. So when I open up a project, that's what I want. Let's call it arrange window. Fine. Now for my second screen set, I like to have my arrange window on one half and my piano roll on the other half. So I'm gonna head over to number 2 here, I have an app called Magnet I use, and so I can just snap this over to the left here, and in Window can open up piano roll right there, and it's really nice. Make sure I have my automation ready to go. This is about the size I like. Let's see, get this zoom. Now for screen set number 3, I'm gonna grab my arrange window on the top and my mixer on the bottom. Now I don't honestly work in the mixer all that often, but occasionally I do. Occasionally I need to be able to get over here. So it's nice to have the opportunity to just hit key command, head to number 3 and grab the mixer. So we're gonna lock the mixer, rename you. So now I have these 3 main setups here. The main window with the piano roll and with the mixer. Those are the 3 I'm going through all the time. I do not use the score editor in Logic. I use Dorico for notation, and it's just never been fun or useful for me to use it in Logic. So I used to have that in my template, like a window all set up for that, but I don't use it, so I'm not gonna bother. All right, so the last thing I wanna do is a couple little aesthetic fine-tuning things. So I like to actually have the project start at -4. I just like to have a little bit of lead-in time, especially if I'm working in video. I know that I can just have a little lead-in time if I need to record early or something right into a downbeat. I find that better than starting the project at bar 5. That just, I like to start at bar 1. It makes more sense to me. So I put in a little bit of negative space there. I think that's just useful. The next thing I want to do is add some markers. So over in the marker list here, I'm looking here in length as time, event position and length as time, because I want this right at 1 hour, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, 0 frames, just clean. I'm gonna lock it and we're gonna call this in. That's my start time. So if somehow things shift around or move, I have that locked. Now I'm gonna go to 0 minutes and 30 seconds, add a marker there, lock it. 1 minute even, add a marker there. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. Now, why am I doing that? Because a lot of times when I get asked to do something, I'm also asked to do it at a specific length. So somebody says, hey, I need a 30-second jingle, or hey, I need a library track and it needs to be between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. So I like to have these in my template just ready to go, so I know exactly what I'm aiming for. So let's say somebody says to me, hey, we need a new library track, and I'm working and I come up with some ideas and I figure out my tempo is 75. Then I have a pretty good idea of what I'm trying to light. Okay, a 90-second track, that's gonna be about 28 bars of music. Not only does that give me kind of the goal I'm working towards, but then also I can kind of figure out my form. So I might have like a 4-bar idea and I can see, okay, this is 7 4-bar phrases or 7 4-bar ideas roughly. Now, you know, I'm not gonna stick to that exactly, but it just gives me a sense of what I'm working on. And then again, then I can plan. So I'm like, okay, this one's gonna be an intro, then maybe A, B, out, for example. That would be part of the usefulness of just having these markers here. Is it just without having to set them up every single time? I found I was using them a lot, so I just put them in my template. All right, we're looking pretty good. So now I just want to close any windows I don't need, make sure everything's about the right size. I'm gonna go to edit and delete undo history so that all the little things I've been doing and changing don't come with every new project that I start. Like I may have mistyped the number for the marker. I don't need that to be remembered for every single thing going forward with this template. Let's see, about how long? I think maybe having that as an 8-bar loop will be fine to start. We'll zoom in a bit there. Make sure I lock that screen set. How about over here? Is this a good length? This looks pretty good. I think it is about done. So now, no matter what style of music I'm doing, I'm gonna start in this template. Oh, there's one last thing I wanna do is just test how long does it take to open. So let's make sure we save as template. All right, now, and let's time it. So I got a little clock running. We're gonna see how long, new from template. We're gonna open template 2022. Boom, it's here. Now, do I have sounds yet? And it just has sounds, it's amazing. That would have taken so much longer before, just It's great. It's awesome. Pretty excited. So there it is. New template for the new M1 Max MacBook, and loads of RAM and performance. You know, obviously haven't been pushing it, but I have tested this in a few other projects and it works perfectly fine. There's no problems at all. And if you're worried about contact or any of those things, I haven't had a single glitch or problem so far. So far so good with all of that. New year, new template, and new setup, ready to go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.